Josephine Noland asked Grant Ashby to marry her before the county clerk had finished unlocking the courthouse door. The iron key was still turning in the lock when she said it. No greeting, no preface. "I need a husband before noon." Grant stood on the top step with dust on his boots and a folded cattle receipt in one hand. Behind Josephine, a broadside snapped against the courthouse wall. Josephine Noland, thief, liar, woman of corrupt character. The letters were large enough to be read from the street. Two men outside the mercantile had already read them twice. One watched Josephine now. The other watched the compositor's portfolio strapped beneath her torn cuff and held tight against her ribs. Her right palm had been scraped raw before dawn when someone forced the attic room door. The hand was wrapped in a strip torn from her petticoat. Her wrist had darkened beneath the skin where she had refused to release the portfolio. Grant looked from the broadside to her face. He did not laugh. That was one reason she had chosen him. "You need a husband," he said. "Not necessarily me. You are the man I am asking." The clerk pushed the door inward, glanced at them, and carried his ring of keys down the hall without comment. Grant remained on the step. "Why?" Josephine had prepared several answers. Only one mattered. "Last winter, a way slip was altered in your favor at the stock pens. Nearly $20. You read the count again slowly and made the clerk correct it. Grant's expression did not change. "You saw that? I was delivering auction bills. And that makes me fit for marriage. It makes you less dangerous than the other men available before noon." The broadside cracked in the wind. Grant unfolded the cattle receipt once, then folded it again. He did not look embarrassed by the insult. "What happened to your room?" "Locked before daylight. My trunk was searched. My tools are still inside Venn job office. Mrs. Talbot might take you. She refused before sunrise. Cyrus sent 2 men to watch her house. There is a boarding house near the depot. Full, according to a woman who would not open the door more than 3 inches. Grant's gaze dropped to the portfolio strap. "You have money?" 84 cents passage east? Not enough. I can pay for it. And where do I wait while you arrange it? At the depot where Cyrus's men are looking. Grant rested one hand on the courthouse rail. He did not move closer. "I can hire you, paid work. Separate lodging. Work does not make a locked door appear today. Lodging does not become private because you paid for it. A lawful household on private ranch land does." He took in the answer without flinching. "Marriage will not erase his complaint, I know. It will not make whatever is in that portfolio yours. No. It will not stop the sheriff from asking questions. I need questions asked where Cyrus cannot open my trunk first." The second man outside the mercantile had begun crossing the street. Josephine saw him over Grant's shoulder. Grant saw her see him. He shifted one step, placing his body between her and the approaching man without blocking her path to the courthouse door. "What do you want the marriage to mean?" he asked. "A room inside a house with a lock that works from my side. My tools and wages remain mine. You do not open my trunk or this portfolio. You do not claim a husband's privilege over my body. If I leave, you do not stop me." The man from the mercantile slowed when Grant turned his head. He did not come closer. Grant looked back at Josephine. "Anything else?" "You do not speak for me when I can speak for myself." "Agreed. You answered too quickly. You asked a clear question. I have not asked the worst one." "Ask it." Josephine held his gaze. "What do you believe a husband is owed?" The courthouse hallway smelled of dust, old paper, and lamp oil. Somewhere inside, the clerk opened a ledger. Grant's answer came without hesitation. "Nothing you do not choose to give." The word struck deeper than tenderness would have. Tenderness could be performed. A limit stated before vows was harder to counterfeit. Josephine reached for the door. "Then come inside." The justice of the peace arrived 10 minutes later with his coat unbuttoned and his spectacles low on his nose. He asked whether they entered willingly. Josephine said yes. Grant said yes. He did not add that the proposal had happened on a courthouse step beneath an accusation. The clerk opened the marriage register. Josephine signed Josephine Noland in a firm hand. Grant took the pen after her. His first letter pressed so hard the nib scratched the paper. Each line formed slowly. He paused over the final Y in Ashby, as though correcting its shape before the ink dried. Josephine noticed. She did not lean over him or supply the stroke. When the justice pronounced them husband and wife, Grant's eyes lowered briefly to her mouth. The glance lasted no longer than a breath. He stepped back before anyone could expect a kiss. Relief entered Josephine so sharply it almost resembled weakness. She refused it. The ceremony had not made her safe. It had only changed the ground on which danger would meet her. Cyrus Venn stood in the courthouse doorway when they emerged. He wore a dark coat despite the late May sun, his beard trimmed close, his hands clean of ink. The two men from the mercantile remained across the street. "Mrs. Ashby," Cyrus said. That was swift. Josephine kept the portfolio beneath her arm. "You made delay expensive." Cyrus looked past her to Grant. "Ask your new husband what a lie looks like when it wears your name." Grant did not answer. Josephine did. "My name does not need cleaning. Your warning needs an author." A small tightening appeared at the corner of Cyrus's mouth. "You removed property from my shop. I preserved a discarded form after you altered unconfirmed concern into contagious sickness. You admit taking it. I admit you placed it where broken forms went before distribution began." Cyrus's gaze returned to the portfolio. "Hand it over, and I may withdraw the broadside. Name the person who ordered the warning." "You mistake employment for authority." "No, I mistook your silence beneath an unsigned notice for cowardice." The justice had stopped just inside the doorway. The clerk stood behind him with the register still open. Cyrus noticed the witnesses. His voice lowered. "She will not protect you from theft." Grant finally spoke. "She did not say it would." Cyrus turned on him. "You know what she is carrying?" "Not yet." "And you married her?" "Yes, fool." Grant accepted the word as if it belonged to the weather. No fist, no threat, no defense Josephine had not requested. Cyrus stepped aside. "When the sheriff comes for that portfolio, do not say I failed to warn you." Josephine walked past him. Her knees felt weak only after she reached the buckboard. Grant placed her trunk space beneath the seat, then stopped with one hand on the rail. "Cottonwood Gate is west," he said. "Sheriff Mercer's office is east." Josephine looked back at Venn job office, where her composing stick, bodkin, bone folder, and trunk still sat behind a man who had already tried to erase her before she could answer. East. Grant turned the team toward town, without asking whether a new wife should first be taken home. The courthouse broadside snapped behind them. Josephine tightened her arm around the portfolio. Inside it rested the locked galley, and the first proof Cyrus wanted badly enough to print her name before she could print his. Sheriff Mercer read the broadside once, folded it with the printed face turned inward, and set it beneath a ledger on his desk. "I can witness Mrs. Ashby reclaiming personal property," he said. "I am not deciding who owns the galley, and I am not deciding whether anyone committed theft." Josephine stood beside Grant, with the compositor's portfolio still strapped against her ribs. Her bruised wrist throbbed where the leather crossed it. "That is all I am asking." Mercer reached for his hat. "Then we do it in daylight, with no hands inside that portfolio but yours." Grant opened the office door for Josephine and stepped aside rather than guiding her through. The act was small. She noticed it anyway. Venn job office occupied a narrow building 2 streets from the depot, its front windows clouded by paper dust. The rear window stood open when they arrived. A board had been wedged inside the frame, not nailed, as if someone expected to leave quickly. 2 men waited near the pressroom door. Josephine recognized both from the mercantile. Sheriff Mercer entered first. "Mrs. Ashby will identify what belongs to her," he said. "You will keep your hands where I can see them." Cyrus stood behind the composing bench with his sleeves rolled and no ink on his fingers. "You bring lawmen now?" "A witness," Josephine said. "Nothing more. You married a rancher and found yourself brave." "I was brave before breakfast." Cyrus's gaze dropped to the portfolio. "That contains shop property. You may make a complaint." Mercer's voice stayed flat. "You will not search her today." The attic room above the shop had been stripped of order. Bedding lay half off the narrow cot. Josephine's trunk stood open with one hinge bent. 2 dresses had been dragged onto the floor, and the blouse with the torn cuff lay where someone had stepped on it. Her tool roll was missing from the shelf. She found it behind a stack of waste paper near the rear stairs. "Mine," she said. Mercer opened his notebook. How do you know? Josephine lifted the composing stick. Nick beside the screw. I made it when I dropped the stick on a stone floor in Cheyenne. She held up the tweezers. These bend inward at the tips, then the bodkin. Crescent burn on the wooden handle. Lamp accident. The mallet bore her initials beneath the head. The bone folder carried JN along one edge, carved by her mother when Josephine began her apprenticeship. Mercer recorded each mark. Grant waited at the attic door until Josephine pointed to the trunk. May I carry it? He asked. Yes, he lifted only the trunk. He did not touch the tool roll, the papers, or the portfolio. Cyrus followed them down the stairs. Open that case, he told Mercer. If she has my galley, you are helping her carry stolen property out. Mercer stopped at the foot of the stairs. I am witnessing removal of items she identifies as personal. You may swear a complaint before the proper officer. You do not get a private search because you printed an accusation. Cyrus's face tightened. That galley was never discarded. Josephine turned. It was on the discard bench for breakdown. After you altered the wording. You were employed to set type, not judge copy. I was employed to set what could be answered for. The two men by the press room shifted closer. Grant placed the trunk on the floor and moved between them and the narrow aisle. He did not raise a fist. His shoulders were enough. We are leaving, Mercer said. Cyrus looked at Grant. You do not even know what she took. Grant's answer came after a brief pause. I know what she asked me not to open. That stopped Cyrus more effectively than a threat. Outside, Josephine tied the tool roll beneath the buckboard seat and checked the trunk strap herself. Mercer watched until the team turned west. Only then did he return toward town. The road to Cottonwood Gate crossed open ground beneath a hard blue afternoon. Josephine kept the portfolio against her side. Grant did not ask what rested inside it. The silence between them felt guarded rather than empty. 10 miles beyond Laramie, the ranch appeared as a weathered gray house, a bunkhouse, a barn missing 2 boards along the north wall, and corrals shaped by use rather than beauty. One corner of the porch leaned. 3 horses stood near the rail. Beyond them, cattle moved across pale grass under the wind. No hidden fortune waited behind the gate, only work. A man with a sun-darkened face came from the barn, wiping his hands on his trousers. Another remained near the loading pen. Grant stopped the buckboard. Amos, he said, this is Josephine. Amos blinked once. Morning. Josephine glanced at the western sun. Afternoon. Amos looked at Grant, then back at her. Afternoon, Mom. Josephine. Grant climbed down and came around the wagon. He offered one hand. Josephine considered it, then placed her left hand in his and stepped to the ground. His grip was firm. The instant both boots settled, he released her. No lingering pressure, no claim disguised as courtesy. He carried the trunk to a small bedroom at the rear of the house. A brass key lay on the quilt. The lock works from inside, he said. Josephine tested it. The bolt slid cleanly into place. Who has another key? No one, not even you. Especially not me. She turned toward him. Especially because I am your wife. Especially because you are. Grant left the doorway before the answer could become intimate. In the ranch office, Josephine noticed a shallow wooden box beneath the desk. Mixed metal letters lay among old sail forms, broken spacing pieces, and 2 cracked wood blocks. Your printing shop? She asked. Grant looked almost embarrassed. Bought it with used ranch forms 3 years ago. Thought I might learn enough to make notices. Did you? Never made much sense of it. Josephine did not examine the box further. The typefaces were visibly mismatched, several letters from different fonts. Nothing about them resembled an organized commercial case. After supper, she placed the portfolio on the kitchen table. Grant sat opposite her. Amos and Eli remained outside with the evening chores. Josephine unwrapped the original locked galley and set it between them. The narrow tray held the false warning in tight rows of type. Beside it, she placed the first proof. Its upper right corner was torn in a small triangle. A faded smear marked the left edge. The sheet had been folded once across the middle, and a second diagonal crease cut the lower corner. Cyrus's pencil correction crossed the main fold. Grant leaned forward without touching either object. You set this. The first wording. Josephine pointed to the penciled lines. It said there were unconfirmed concerns regarding sickness. Cyrus changed it to contagious sickness. Then he added that buyers should not inspect or purchase. Grant read the proof slowly, one line at a time. His eyes paused at longer words. Josephine noticed and kept her attention on the type. "The galley was on the discard bench," she said. "Cyrus may argue it was there only until breakdown. A court may agree. I preserved it because the wording was changed after I warned him no official source had been named. What do you want done with it? Nothing without me." "Agreed. No rider, no sheriff. No stockman sees it unless I decide the conditions." "Agreed." Grant rose and went to the mudroom. He returned carrying a crumpled livestock notice with 2 nail holes along the top. "This was on the loading pen post yesterday." Josephine unfolded it beside the proof. The same capital R had lost part of its lower leg. The small leaned left. Before the final line, the spacing widened in the same unnatural way. Grant followed her finger across the defects. "Cyrus printed this. His shop did." Outside, one of the loose barn boards struck the wall in the wind. Grant looked toward the dark window, then back at the warning taken from his own loading pen. The lie had not merely followed Josephine out of Laramie. It had arrived ahead of her. The warning taken from Cottonwood Gate's loading pen lay beside the locked galley. When daylight reached the kitchen table, Grant read both notices again, slower than before, while Josephine ruled 3 columns across a clean sheet. Her right palm remained bandaged. The bruise around her wrist had begun to yellow at the edges. "The same type printed both," Grant said. "Yes." Josephine touched the chipped capital R with the blunt end of her bodkin. "The leaning F supports it. So does the widened space before the last line." Then Cyrus printed the warning. "His shop printed it." Grant lifted his eyes from the page. "You are making a difference. A necessary one. Type can identify a shop. It cannot tell us who ordered the wording, who approved the run, or whether Cyrus will blame an employee." He looked toward the wrapped first proof. "You heard him change it." "I did." "You did not." "What would another man need to see?" Josephine had expected anger, perhaps the impatience of someone whose cattle had just been named by a lie. Grant offered neither. He asked for the next useful step. "Undisputed work from Venn job office," she said. "Bills, freight notices, auction sheets. Anything printed before this warning that still carries the shop imprint." "How many?" "More than one. Enough to show a pattern rather than a fortunate match." Grant rose. "Where do I find them? Public boards, waste baskets, stock pens. Ask before you take anything that still belongs to someone." "You think I would not?" "I think evidence weakens when a man has to explain why he stole it." His mouth tightened, though not in offense. "Fair." He saddled the bay gelding after breakfast and rode east toward Laramie. Amos watched him leave, then stepped into the kitchen with a tin cup in one hand. He say where he was going, to look for honest paper. Amos glanced at the warning. Paper is what caused the trouble. Dishonest paper caused it. Josephine folded the loading pen copy along its existing crease and placed it in a separate sleeve. "There is a difference." Grant returned near noon, carrying 3 sheets protected inside an empty flour sack. One was a feed store notice, one a public auction bill, and one a freight handbill the mercantile clerk had allowed him to remove from a waste box. Josephine examined each under the window light. None carried the chipped R. "No use?" he asked. "Some use." She recorded the dates and sources. "They show the damaged sorts were not used in every form. A later match will mean more." Grant ate standing at the counter, then rode back to town. By sunset, he had brought 2 more bills, both legitimate Venn work. The next morning, May 27th, he went out again. He searched public boards, asked at the freight office, and collected only discarded or released sheets. By midday, 6 items lay across the kitchen table. 2 mattered. The first was a March auction bill bearing the Venn job office imprint. On the reverse, someone had penciled job number 4 and 16. The second advertised freight storage in early May. It bore job number 418. Both carried the same damaged capital R and the same leaning F found in the false warning. Josephine placed the sheets on either side of the unsigned circular. 416, Grant said. Then 418. "Yes, where is 417? "Missing." "That matters. Only if we find it attached to the warning or to a shop record. Numbers alone can be invented. Sequence becomes evidence when the paper carrying it has a traceable source." Grant picked up the March bill and handed it across the table. Josephine reached for the same corner. Their fingers met over the paper. His skin was rough from rains and fence wire. Hers still carried the tenderness of healing beneath the bandage. Neither released the sheet immediately. The contact lasted no longer than a breath, but it altered the air between them. Josephine withdrew first. Grant passed her the bill without comment. He did not turn the accidental touch into a claim. She placed Job No. 416 into a new evidence folder, then added 418, each with the date, source, and the name of the person who had permitted Grant to take it. "The galley and first proof remain in your room," he asked, "inside the portfolio. Do you want another lock on the case?" "The strap remains sound." "That was not what I asked." Josephine looked at him. "Not yet." Grant accepted the answer. After supper, he brought a stack of old Cottonwood Gate notices into the ranch office. Cattle counts, shipment dates, feed deliveries, and sale terms had been written in several hands over several years. Some figures contradicted one another. "I need new copies," he said. "Printed. Written clean enough to post at the stock pens. Printed if that old box can be made useful." Josephine looked beneath the desk at the mixed type he had bought 3 years earlier. "That box lacks a complete font. Then write the notices by hand. You could do that. I could do it slowly and poorly." Grant placed $4 on the desk. "1 now, 3 when the work is complete." Josephine did not touch the money at once. "You are hiring me, yes. Marriage does not make my labor free. No. And the name beneath the notices, whatever name you use for your work." She drew $1 toward herself. "Josephine Noland Ashby, compositor." Grant repeated it once as though fixing the order in memory. "That is the name they will carry." Josephine sorted the ranch papers into usable facts and doubtful ones. "Write the current cattle count." Grant sat opposite her. His pencil moved slowly, each letter made with care. Josephine turned toward the old forms rather than watch him struggle. When he finished, she checked his number against Amos's tally. "It matched," she said. "That is kinder than good." "I was not being kind." A restrained smile touched his mouth. He opened the desk drawer to put away the pencil. Beneath the blotter lay a small black impression of a meadowlark. Josephine saw the raised beak, the curve of the breast, and a shallow notch along one wing. Her fingers stopped above the papers. She knew that notch. She had made it with a knife 9 years earlier. Grant covered the impression with the blotter too quickly. Josephine looked from his hand to his face. "Where did you get that?" "A long time ago. I carved it." "Yes, for whom?" Grant's hand remained on the drawer pull. "Not tonight." The refusal was not hard. It carried strain. Josephine could have pressed. Instead, she gathered the completed facts into a neat stack. "Do not expect me to forget I saw it." "I do not." She left the office with the $1 advance and the evidence folder. After her bedroom door closed, Grant waited until the house settled. Then he found Amos near the bunkhouse. "You are checking the north line on June 3rd, he said. "Yes, at the cabin there is a locked chest beneath the cot brass latch. The key is behind the loose board over the stove." Amos frowned. "What am I bringing?" "A plain paper packet with my name on it." "Back here?" "Directly. Do not hand it to anyone else." Amos studied him, then nodded. Josephine knew nothing of the request. The following afternoon, a rider from Laramie delivered a sealed message from the buyer, who had been expected to inspect Cottonwood Gate's cattle. Grant broke the wax and read the first line twice before handing the sheet to Josephine. The buyer would not come. He cited the Laramie warning and refused even a visual inspection until the reported sickness had been resolved. "Was he your only buyer?" Josephine asked. "No, your best." The one prepared to take the cattle before winter feed became the question. "How long can you hold them?" "Long enough to lose money, not long enough to ignore hay." Grant rested both hands on the table. "Toland came to me last week with an offer nearly a third below what the herd should bring." Josephine looked up. "Before the warning was posted here?" "Before I saw it anywhere." Job Nos. 416 and 418 lay inside the evidence folder. Between them waited an empty place. Josephine looked at the unsigned warning, then at the buyer's refusal. The missing number was no longer the largest question. The warning was printed to make somebody rich. Toland's low offer had reached Cottonwood Gate before the warning. So Josephine went to Laramie on May 28th asking for dates rather than opinions. By noon, 3 small ranchers had given her the same answer in different words. Darnell had been approached 4 days before the warning appeared. A widow west of town had received a reduced offer 2 days before a copy reached her gate. Another rancher had been told his shipment might become difficult unless he accepted a lower price by week's end. None had known the others were hearing nearly the same language. Josephine wrote down only what each person could swear to: date, buyer, amount, shipment window, exact phrase. She did not write conspiracy, not yet. Grant remained several steps away during every interview. He heard the answers but never supplied one. When a rancher asked whether Cottonwood Gate had already agreed to sell through Toland, Grant said, "Ask her what matters to the printing. Ask me what happened to my cattle." Josephine recorded his answer too. Near the freight office, the pattern sharpened. Each targeted ranch had commissioned a sale bill, freight card, or shipment notice through Venn job office within the previous 2 months. Those papers had carried more than prices. They had carried dates, number of cattle, intended rail space, the exact week a small ranch could least afford delay. Larger outfits had not been ignored by chance. They could hold cattle longer, refuse a bad offer, or move animals through buyers already friendly to Cyrus. Josephine closed her notebook. He did not need to spy on ranches, she said. They paid his shop to tell him when they would be vulnerable. Grant looked toward the tracks where a freight car stood open beneath drifting coal smoke. And we thanked him for printing it neatly. Useful information often arrives looking ordinary. They had crossed halfway toward the stock pens when Cyrus stepped from the shade beside the mercantile. His coat remained buttoned despite the afternoon warmth. "You are making yourself tiresome," he said. "That is less expensive than making myself silent. Return the galley. Leave Wyoming territory. I will withdraw the theft accusation." Josephine stopped. Grant stopped beside her but left enough distance that Cyrus had to face her directly. "Will you also admit the attic room was deducted from my wages?" she asked. "That is not relevant. Will you admit the form was on the discard bench? For breakdown. Will you name who ordered the livestock warning?" Cyrus's mouth flattened. "You were employed to set, type, not interrogate customers." "Then name the customer." "No. Why was the shop imprint omitted?" "Custom. Why do legitimate jobs carry numbers while you deny this run existed?" For the first time his gaze moved toward the portfolio at Josephine's side. "You have no numbered warning. You answered before I said whether I did." Wind pushed dust along the boardwalk. A clerk inside the mercantile stopped weighing beans. 2 cattlemen near the door turned to listen. Cyrus lowered his voice. "You are confusing a temporary advantage with safety. Return what belongs to me, leave the territory, and this can end." "For whom?" "For you." "No, it ends for you." His gaze shifted to Grant. "Control your wife." Grant's reply was plain. "No. She asked you. Restraint does not make you noble, Ashby. It keeps me from interrupting." Cyrus looked back at Josephine. "You have one chance to leave with what remains of your reputation." "My reputation is not yours to return. You married a desperate cattleman and tied yourself to his losses. Then answer why buyers approached desperate cattlemen before the warning existed." A wagon passed, iron tires striking hard against the road. Cyrus waited until the sound covered the first part of his reply. "Markets reward men who recognize weakness. Printing a lie is not recognizing weakness." "Prove it." "I intend to." Cyrus stepped closer, not enough to touch her, enough to make the threat private. "Stolen metal will not save you." Josephine held her ground. "Then you should have no reason to bargain for it." He left without another word. The listeners did not offer support. One man looked away. Another watched Josephine with curiosity, where contempt had been that morning. That was not reversal, it was a crack. Useful cracks admitted light. Near the stock pens, a stronger gust caught the top sheet of Josephine's notebook. She trapped one corner, but the pages beneath lifted and struck against her healing wrist. Grant extended his forearm without taking hold of her. Josephine braced her left hand against his sleeve and pinned the papers with her bandaged right palm. His arm stayed steady beneath her. He did not close the space between them or place a hand at her waist. When the wind eased, she released him. "Thank you. You kept the dates. Barely. Barely still counts." They returned to Cottonwood Gate before dark. The next morning, Josephine turned the kitchen table into a map. Amos and Eli supplied ranch locations and shipment times. Grant named the buyers who had approached each outfit. Strips of paper marked small ranches, rail dates, and the moment each low offer had arrived. The pattern did not form a circle around Laramie. It formed a calendar. Every targeted ranch needed to sell soon. Every one had less hay or credit than the larger outfits left untouched. The warning did not need to convince everyone, Josephine said. Only enough buyers for long enough. Amos tapped Darnell's strip. "He can wait maybe 2 weeks. And the widow, less." Grant studied the papers. Cottonwood Gate's shipment notice was printed at Venn job office last month, with the date and the cattle count. Josephine moved the notice closer to the center of the table. Then Cyrus did not have to guess which ranches would bend first. Their paid jobs told him. Hoofbeats entered the yard before noon. The rider who dismounted wore Darnell's brand on his vest and carried a folded circular inside an oilcloth sleeve. "Mr. Darnell sent me," he said. "North Road rancher kept this because the boy who delivered it acted peculiar." Josephine did not touch the sheet until the rider gave his name and the rancher's written statement. Grant brought ink and a clean page. Josephine recorded the transfer before opening the oilcloth. The circular matched the warning from Cottonwood Gate. Same wording, same damaged letters. A diagonal fold crossed the lower half. "What did the rancher say?" she asked. The rider read from the signed note. "A delivery boy from Venn job office brought a bundle on May 23rd. The bundle came up 1 copy short. Boy took the last sheet from inside his satchel and nailed it to the gate himself. Rancher noticed writing on the back when wind folded it over." Josephine turned the circular. Near the lower edge, faint beneath road dust, pencil marks read job number 417. Amos leaned closer. "That is the missing one." "It is a numbered warning," Josephine said. "Nothing more until its source is confirmed." "The source is Venn's delivery boy," Eli said. "According to one rancher's statement. We still need the boy to identify the sheet or explain why a numbered copy left the shop." She placed the circular between the 2 legitimate bills. Job No. 416, job number 417, job number 418. The sequence fit too neatly to dismiss and not neatly enough to stand alone. "Could the number have been added later?" Grant asked. "Yes." "Could the rancher be mistaken about the boy?" "Yes." "Could Cyrus say the boy acted alone?" "He will." Grant looked at the 3 sheets. "Then what does this give us?" "A question he cannot answer by calling me a thief." Josephine drew a clean page from Grant's stack and wrote a preservation request. Any rancher holding a livestock warning was asked to keep the original sheet, record where and when it had been found, and name the person who handled it. No conclusions, no demand for loyalty. Under the final line, she signed Josephine Noland Ashby, compositor. Grant read the heading slowly. "You want copies made, 3 today. More if ranchers agree to carry them." He sat with blank sheets and began copying in his large, uneven hand. Josephine did not watch each letter form. She returned the numbered circular to its oilcloth sleeve, then placed it inside the evidence folder with the rancher's statement and rider's transfer note. The folder went into her portfolio above the wrapped galley and first proof. Nothing had moved without a name attached. Nothing had become stronger than its source allowed. Yet one question remained sharper than all the others. If Cyrus meant to deny job number 417 ever existed, why had he allowed the only numbered warning they had found to leave his shop? By the morning of May 30th, 3 more livestock warnings had reached Cottonwood Gate, each wrapped with the name of the rancher who found it, the date, and the place where it had been posted. None carried a job number. Only the North Road copy bore 417. Josephine laid the 4 circulars across the kitchen table and compared their folds, ink density, and paper. "The numbered sheet came from inside the delivery satchel," she said. "The others came from the bundle." Grant stood beside the stove with 2 unopened messages in his hand, and Cyrus sent the retained copy out because he wanted it gone from the shop. "That is one possibility. You have another? The apprentice may have acted alone. He may have been careless. The number may have been added by someone else." We do not choose the answer before we find the source. Grant set the messages down. Then these will not improve your morning. Both buyers had declined Cottonwood Gate. One would reconsider only after another outfit inspected the herd. The second would not risk being first to ignore what he called a public disease warning. Josephine read the phrase twice. Public, she said. The sheet names no office, no inspector, and no printer. Yet men have supplied authority for it themselves. Amos rested both hands on the back of a chair. That still leaves us with cattle nobody wants. Grant unfolded the ranch account sheet. We can hold them. For how long, Josephine asked. Long enough to spend more than they are worth holding. Hay reserve, enough for ordinary delay. Not enough if buyers wait until they can name any price they please. Eli came in from the yard, hat beneath one arm. South Meadow could be cut harder. Grant shook his head. Then a dry summer leaves us nothing. Josephine looked at the warning copies, then at the buyer's refusals. Cyrus had built his lie to grow stronger each time one frightened man waited for another to act first. Then stop asking them to believe Cottonwood Gate, she said. Ask them to come look. Amos frowned. At the whole herd? No, at a selected group in daylight with the count witnessed. We state only what can be observed. A woman from a print shop inviting cattlemen to judge stock, Amos said. Some won't like it. They do not need to like me. Josephine drew a clean sheet closer. They need to see that the warning ordered them not to inspect. We invite inspection. Grant studied her face. You will not claim the herd is cleared. I have no authority to clear anything. The notice will say 12 cattle, 3 groups, no animals moved in, from another ranch, and open observation at the loading pen. And if Cyrus says we chose the healthiest 12, he will be correct that we chose them. That is why the notice will not claim more. Amos looked from Josephine to Grant. You agree with this? Grant folded the account sheet. She asked for witness count, not my permission. Josephine wrote the notice before noon. Grant supplied the cattle history. Amos and Eli signed beneath the count they would witness. At the bottom, Josephine wrote her professional name. Copies went toward Laramie, Darnell's ranch, the West Road, and the stock pens. By the next morning, June 1st, one buyer came. Mr. Coulter arrived alone on a narrow bay horse and tested the loading pen latch before he greeted anyone. His coat had been brushed clean, though trail dust covered the lower half of his trousers. You selected the animals, he asked Grant. Yes. Best 12? Sound 12 from 3 groups. Any treated? No. Any brought in from elsewhere? No. Coulter turned to Josephine, who stood outside the rail with her notebook. What are you here to certify? Nothing. His brows rose. Your name is on the notice because I wrote it. Amos and Eli certify the count. Grant answers for the cattle's history. You answer for what you observe. Paper does not make an animal healthy. No. Paper made men afraid to look. That earned a sharper glance, but Coulter entered the pen. He worked without haste. He watched the cattle move, checked eyes and nostrils, ran a hand along 2 hides, and listened to their breathing. He asked about feed, travel, water, and whether any animal had lagged behind the others. Grant answered only what was asked. Josephine noticed the effort that restraint cost him. Twice he began to add an explanation. Twice he stopped. Nearly an hour passed before Coulter came out and washed his hands at the pump. I see no outward sign in these 12 that justifies calling the herd diseased, he said. Amos exhaled. Eli shifted his weight forward. Grant remained still. Will you buy? Josephine asked. Not today. The answer landed harder because it followed the inspection. Why? Eli demanded. Because I inspected 12 cattle. If I contract now and the market turns against them, the loss is mine. Amos gestured toward the pen. You saw them. I did. Coulter faced Josephine. Get 2 more buyers here. Let them inspect another group. Then the warning begins to look more costly than the risk. Will you put what you saw in writing? If you write only what I said. Josephine did. 12 selected cattle. No outward signs observed that justified the warning's certainty. Buyer declined purchase because broader market risk remained. Coulter read the statement, changed disease to reported sickness, then signed beneath it. Josephine placed the sheet in her portfolio, behind the source notes, and before the wrapped galley. It did not prove the herd was healthy. It proved a man could inspect cattle, see no outward cause for certainty, and still refuse because fear had already moved the market. Partial truth, useful truth. After Coulter rode away, Grant thanked Amos and Eli by name. Then he brought the completed ranch notices from the office. Josephine had copied the current cattle count, shipment estimate, and inspection terms in a hand clear enough to post publicly. Beneath each notice appeared Josephine Noland Ashby, compositor. Grant laid $3 silver beside them, the balance. Josephine counted the coins. You checked the work? Yes. All of it? Slowly. Any corrections? One date. You fixed it before finishing. She wrote a receipt and signed it. Grant folded the paper into his account book. Marriage had not swallowed the transaction. He had hired her. She had delivered. He had paid. When he reached for the notices, Josephine saw blood at the knuckle of his right hand. What happened? Grant glanced down. Nail on the loading post brace. Sit. It is shallow. Then it will not delay you long. He sat at the kitchen table. Josephine brought warm water, soap, and clean cloth. The cut held grit along one edge. She washed it while Grant kept his hand open. His fingers were scarred from rope, cold repairs, and years of work that left no room for vanity. He did not curl them around hers. Does Amos believe complaint improves an injury? She asked. Amos believes complaint improves most work. From the doorway came Amos's voice, only when nobody listens the first time. Josephine tied the clean strip around Grant's knuckle. The need for touch ended. Her fingers remained around his wrist. One breath, then another. His pulse moved against the pad of her thumb. Grant went still without becoming expectant. He did not turn his hand or pull her closer. Josephine let her thumb rest once against the warm skin above his cuff, then released him. Keep it clean, I will. That is not a promise to remove the bandage in an hour. Then I will try to keep it. The answer nearly drew a smile from her. Hoofbeats crossed the yard before it could. Eli entered carrying a fresh broadside by one corner. 3 on the south road, he said. 2 more near the stock pens. Josephine took the sheet. The heading accused Grant Ashby and his new wife of arranging a marriage to manufacture evidence and deceive buyers. The smaller lines claimed Josephine had built the disputed galley at Cottonwood Gate, using loose types supplied by her husband. Then came a sentence enclosed in quotation marks. A warning sounds official even when no official signed it. Josephine read it once. The kitchen seemed to lose all sound around the words. She had spoken that sentence inside Venn job office before Sheriff Mercer witnessed the retrieval. Grant rose from the table. Who heard you say it? Cyrus. She touched the printed line. And the apprentice behind the partition. The broadside had answered one question and opened a worse one. Someone inside the shop had given Cyrus her private words. The only uncertainty was whether the boy had betrayed her willingly or set the sentence because he had been given no safe way to refuse. The apprentice had heard Josephine's private sentence, but the broadside did not tell her whether he had given it willingly. By sunrise on June 2nd, copies of the accusation had reached the stock pens, the Mercantile, and 2 road crossings west of Laramie. Grant folded one and placed it inside Josephine's portfolio without disturbing the evidence beneath it. His right knuckle remained wrapped in the clean strip she had tied the day before. You speak first, he said. I'll stay far enough back that he can leave. Josephine studied him. You think he will be frightened of you? I think a frightened boy may answer the man blocking his path instead of the woman asking the question. That was the right answer. They found the apprentice behind a feed warehouse near the railroad siding. He was sorting broken packing crates. His sleeves rolled despite the cool wind. Gray lead stained the beds of his fingernails. When he saw Josephine, the board in his hand stopped moving. Grant remained near the buckboard more than 20 feet away. Josephine approached alone. I am not here to accuse you. The boy glanced toward Grant. He doesn't need to stand there. He is standing where I asked him to. The broadside says you built the galley at his ranch. The broadside says many things. I came to ask about one sentence. She repeated the quoted words. A warning sounds official even when no official signed it. I said that inside Venn job office. Cyrus heard me. You may have heard me from behind the partition. The apprentice bent as if to pick up another board, though none had fallen. Sound carries. Did Cyrus ask what I said? His hands paused. He said, "The sheriff needed to know whether you threatened the shop." "Did he say that before or after he printed my name?" "Before the second broadside." "What happened if you refused him?" The boy looked toward the tracks. A freight car stood open beyond the siding while two men loaded sacks. He said no printer from Laramie to Cheyenne would hire a boy who spoiled forms and stole type.
Did you?
"Spoil the warning?" "No." "Did you steal type?" "No." "Then he threatened to place his actions beneath your name." The apprentice's face flushed. "You don't know what he can do." "I know what he did to mine that stopped him." Josephine did not step closer. "Did he order the broadside against me?" "He brought the heading himself." "Who set the smaller lines?" "I did." Shame sharpened the answer. "For wages." "Wages and fear can occupy the same room." He looked at her then. "You want me to say he forced me? I want you to say only what happened." Wind drove dust between the buildings. The apprentice wiped one palm against his trousers. "Mr. Venn said the marriage made the story better. He told me to leave the shop name off, same as the livestock warning." "Did you set that warning?" "The lower lines." "You set the first form before you changed the words." "And job number 417. His eyes narrowed. "Where did you see that?" "On a warning delivered to the North Road. It bears a diagonal fold and a penciled number." The boy's mouth opened, then closed. "That was the retained sheet." "You are certain?" "I wrote no number. Mr. Venn did. He numbered jobs when a run began." "Why did the retained sheet leave the shop?" "The bundle came up one short." He rubbed the heel of his hand over his brow. "Mr. Venn said he did not want the numbered copy left in the case. Told me to put it in the delivery satchel. I carried it to the North Road myself." "You gave it to the rancher?" "Nailed it to his gate. Wind folded it over before I left." The source line tightened around job number 417. Josephine let the answer settle before asking the next question. The first proof had a triangular tear in the upper right corner, a faded ink smear on the left edge, and Cyrus's pencil correction crossing the middle fold. "Do you remember it?" The apprentice looked at her sharply. "There was another crease across the lower corner." "Yes. I made that one when I folded it to carry to Mr. Venn's desk." "Did the tear already exist?" "Yes." "Did you see him make the correction?" "He changed unconfirmed concerns to contagious sickness. Wrote straight across the fold because he was angry." "Was that before I left the shop? Before you married Ashby? Before the first warning went out?" Josephine had not asked him to date the marriage. He had placed the proof in time himself. "What is Cyrus doing with the old type now?" "Breaking down the cases. Worn capitals into a melting box. He started with the damaged letters yesterday." "The chipped R?" "I saw it in the box." "Will you tell Sheriff Mercer or the stockman what you just told me?" The boy stepped back. "No, not today. Not any day. That is your choice." Suspicion replaced part of his fear. "You won't tell them I promised." "You did not promise." "You won't call it a confession." "You answered questions." "I will not enlarge that." He stared at her as though he had expected usefulness to become pressure. Josephine gave him none. "If you choose differently later, go to Sheriff Mercer or find me in public. Do not come to Cottonwood Gate alone if Cyrus is watching." She turned away. "Mrs. Ashby." Josephine stopped. "Mr. Venn didn't mean to discard the galley," the boy said. "He was going to break it down. Then he may say that before witnesses. He says you stole it. That question belongs to a proper complaint. The warning belongs to the public that believed it." Grant waited until she reached the buckboard before asking, "Did he confirm the numbered sheet?" "Yes." "He delivered it. He also recognized the first proof." "Will he speak publicly?" "No." Grant looked toward the warehouse corner, where the boy had disappeared. "Then we leave him alone. We leave him his choice." He untied the team. "And build a case that survives without him." They returned to Cottonwood Gate on June 3rd, under a sky scrubbed pale by wind. After supper, Josephine spread her notes across Grant's office desk. The original locked galley, first proof, jobs 416, 417, and 418, Coulter's signed observation, and the source statements remained inside her portfolio at her feet. Grant copied the apprentice's words in his large, deliberate hand. His rapped knuckle made the pencil awkward. Twice he stopped over the same word. Josephine waited. "You can correct it," he said. "When you finish, you already know what I mean. That is not the same as letting you state it." Grant set down the pencil. I learned letters late. The admission came without warning. My father thought reading made a boy idle. After he died, I paid a schoolmaster in Laramie to teach me at night. How old were you? 20. And you still learned? Slowly. Slowness is not dishonesty. Grant released a tired breath. Cyrus reads quickly, writes quickly, prints quickly, and lies quickly. Those are separate talents. His gaze lifted to hers. Then he opened the desk drawer. Beneath the blotter lay the meadowlark woodblock, its carved face darkened by old ink. Beside it rested the impression Josephine had glimpsed 2 days earlier. She lifted the paper by one corner. Beneath the bird in Grant's hand was written May 1879. Memory returned in pieces, lamp oil, damp paper, a young man holding 3 coins, grief making every word formal. I carved this for your brother's memorial notice, she said. Samuel, you told me he listened for meadowlarks every spring. Yes. I gave you the block after the notice was printed. I know. Grant did not take it from her. There are things I should have said sooner. About Samuel? About you. His hand opened on the desk, palm upward. An offer. Josephine looked at it, then placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers without pulling. The new skin across her right palm was pink and tender, but the pressure of his hand did not hurt. Tell me, she said. Grant's eyes moved to her mouth, then returned to her face. May I kiss you? The question warmed her because he had asked, instead of assuming the vows had answered for her. Josephine leaned toward him. Hoofbeats entered the yard before their mouths met. Grant released her at once. Amos came through the office doorway, carrying a flat packet wrapped in brown paper. Dust covered his coat and the lower legs of his trousers. Left before sunup, he said. Northline cabin is still standing. Chest was where you said. He placed the packet on the desk, brought it straight back. Grant opened it only after Josephine stepped beside him. Inside lay 8 meadowlark impressions, each marked with 1 1880, 1881, 1882, 1883, 1884, 1885, 1886, and 1887. Josephine placed them beside the print dated May 1879. 9 birds, 9 springs. And Grant had already told her the truth concerned her. 9 meadowlarks lay across Grant's desk when daylight came on June 4th, each bird identical except for the year written beneath it, in his slow, heavy hand. Josephine arranged them from left to right, 1879, 1880, 1881. The line continued through 1887. The shallow notch along one wing appeared in every impression, the mark left by her own knife 9 years earlier. Grant stood opposite her with his hat, resting near the lamp. He had not moved the prints during the night. Tell me about Samuel, Josephine said. Grant's attention settled on the first bird. He was 16 when he died. Fever took him before spring broke. You came to the print office for a memorial notice. I had 3 coins and the words I thought a notice ought to contain. She remembered him now with painful clarity. 22 years old, shoulders too broad for the narrow shop, hat crushed between both hands. He had read the first proof 1 word at a time, his finger moving beneath each line. She had mistaken difficulty for grief alone. You told me Samuel listened for meadowlarks, she said, every March. He claimed they called before the snow was finished. I carved the bird after the shop closed. You did not charge me. The notice needed something that belonged to him. Grant lifted one hand, then let it fall before touching the paper. That was when it began. Josephine knew what he meant. She made him say it. What began? Loving you. The office seemed to narrow around the desk. Josephine placed her fingertips beside the 1879 print. You made this the next spring. Yes. And another every year. Yes. Why? Grant's jaw tightened. Each spring I thought I might write. There are no words on these. No. Did you know where I was? Not most years. I heard you had gone east with a printer's family. Later someone said Cheyenne. I did not know whether either was true. Did you ask after me? Once? Only once? The man I asked laughed. Said I had imagined kindness from a woman who had probably forgotten my name. Grant did not look away. I let that answer more than it should have. Josephine moved to the 1886 impression. You saw me after I returned to Laramie. Yes. More than once? Yes. And still said nothing. I found reasons not to. What reasons? You had a trade. You walked through town as if your life belonged to you. I was still a man who needed twice as long to read a bill and 3 times as long to answer one. You believed I would despise you for reading slowly? I believed you remembered me as a grieving ranch hand who could barely finish his brother's notice. I remembered the meadowlark, not me. You never gave me reason to. Grant accepted that without defense. No. Josephine studied the 9 prints, 9 springs, 9 chances, 9 refusals disguised as patience. Why did you send Amos for the packet? You saw the first impression beneath my blotter, and you saw that I recognized it. Yes, so you decided to tell me. I decided I could not hide the rest. That is not the same as telling me. No. You waited for the packet. Yes, and before it arrived, you asked to kiss me. Grant's face tightened. Yes. You were willing to let me come closer before I knew why you had kept a piece of my work for 9 years. I was. The honesty hurt more cleanly than excuse. Josephine looked at his open face, the shame he had stopped trying to conceal. Desire had not vanished. It had become tangled with a truth she had not been allowed to choose around. She moved one hand across the desk and turned her palm upward. Grant waited until she held it there. Then he placed his hand in hers. Josephine closed her fingers around him deliberately. His skin was warm. The cut on his knuckle had narrowed to a thin red line. "Tell me all of it while I am still willing to hold your hand," she said. Grant's fingers tightened once, then eased. "I never followed you. Did you read letters meant for me? No. Ask printers to report where I worked? Never. Interfere with employment? No. Any courtship? No. Did you write and fail to send it? No. Then what did you do with 9 years? Grant looked down at their joined hands. Worked, built Cottonwood Gate, made 1 print each spring. Saw you in town after you returned and found a reason not to speak every time. That is not devotion alone. No. Some of it is fear. Most of it. Josephine's thumb rested against the side of his hand. Say the truth without making it beautiful. Grant raised his eyes to hers. I have loved you 9 years. The words did not feel like rescue. They altered every hour since the courthouse. His quick agreement, the separate room, the way he had listened to each practical condition as though it carried an older meaning. His kindness remained kindness. His restraint remained real, but he had entered their marriage with a private history she had not known existed. Is that why you married me? She asked. It is why I could answer without needing time. Would you have helped if I refused marriage? Yes. Paid for a room if one could be found? Yes. Bought passage? Yes. Then your love did not create the offer of safety? No. But it changed what the vows meant to you. Grant's voice lowered. Yes. Josephine held his hand long enough to understand the injury. Then she released him. His fingers opened immediately. You knew what the vow meant to your heart, she said. I knew what it might keep me alive long enough to do. I should have told you before the ceremony. Yes. I was afraid you would choose another road. That was mine to choose. Yes, he did not ask her to forgive fear because it had worn the face of love. Josephine stepped away from the desk. Do not make these prints into proof that I owe you anything. You owe me nothing. Do not tell me 9 years makes your silence noble. It does not. And do not ask me to comfort you for telling the truth late. I will not. The answers came without self-defense, but they could not restore the choice she had made with only half the knowledge. I need space today. You have it. The galley remains in my room. Yes. The first proof, Jobs 417-4418, Coulter's observation, and every source statement remain in my portfolio. Yes. We continue the work tomorrow. Grant glanced at the 9 birds. If that is what you choose, it is. Josephine left him standing beside the years he had spent saying nothing. She worked behind her locked door through the afternoon, copying warning dates, buyer approaches, and source statements into clean columns. Work gave anger a shape without dulling it. Outside, Grant checked the western fence, spoke with Amos, and never came to her door. He kept the space he had promised. Near dusk, hoofbeats entered the yard. Amos knocked once and waited in the hall until Josephine opened. He held a fresh broadside by one corner. Grant came from the kitchen but stopped several feet away. Josephine unfolded the sheet. Cyrus had printed a new accusation. It claimed Grant Ashby had arranged the marriage to shelter a dishonest compositor. manufacture evidence at Cottonwood Gate, and force rival buyers from the market. It called Josephine a willing partner in fraud. The wording turned their legal vows into proof of conspiracy. Grant read from where he stood. "I can have the copies removed." "No." Josephine folded the broadside once. He corrected himself before she had to. "What do you want?" The question mattered because he asked before acting. Josephine looked toward the office where 9 private meadowlarks remained on Grant's desk, then down at the public lie in her own hands. "I will answer it under my name." Grant did not offer his reputation, his protection, or his permission. "Tell me what you need." "Drive the buckboard," Josephine said. "Do not answer for me unless I ask. Do not remove anything bearing my name." Grant received the instructions without protest. Agreed. Before sunrise on June 5th, Josephine opened the old mixed-job type box beneath the ranch office desk. The letters came from several fonts and several owners. Some capitals were too narrow. 2 lowercases had worn shoulders. Broken spacing pieces forced her to improvise. None matched the chipped R, leaning F, or damaged furniture held in Cyrus's galley. That difference mattered. She set the statement 3 lines at a time, pulled each section by hand, broke the form down, and began again. Her right palm had healed to pink new skin, but prolonged pressure made it burn. She rested only long enough to keep pain from changing the impression. By midday, 3 complete sheets lay drying on the kitchen table. The ink varied slightly between sections. The wording did not. I preserved discarded locked type because it contained the form used to print a false livestock warning. My marriage neither creates nor erases what that form can prove. I will demonstrate the type before witnesses and state both its meaning and its limits. Josephine signed each sheet in dark ink. Josephine Noland, Ashby, compositor. She marked the reverse of the first board copy. The second became mercantile copy. The third, retained meeting copy, went directly into her portfolio above the source statements, and Coulter's signed observation. Grant read the board copy from across the table. The 9 meadowlark impressions were no longer spread in the office. He had wrapped them in plain paper and returned the packet to the desk drawer beside the woodblock. "You repeat the charge about the marriage," he said, "only enough to answer it. Men will repeat the insult louder than the answer. They already do." Grant's jaw tightened. "You do not have to stand beside a public board while they use your name for amusement." "I do not have to. I choose to." She rolled the composing stick into her tool cloth. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Drive. Stand where I ask. Do not speak for me. Do not take down anything with my name on it." His gaze rested on the signed sheet. "I heard you the first time. I need you to remember it after someone hurts me." Grant looked up. "I will." They reached Laramie late the next morning. June 6th brought a hard west wind that flattened dust against wagon wheels and made every posted sheet strain beneath its tacks. Cyrus's accusation had multiplied overnight. Copies hung near the depot road, outside the feed store, beside the mercantile, and along the stock pens. Men turned as Josephine crossed the yard, carrying a hammer and the board copy. Grant remained by the hitching rail until she glanced back and nodded. Only then did he follow. Josephine placed her statement beside Cyrus's broadside. She drove the upper tack through clean paper, then the lower, and pressed the sheet flat. 3 ranchers gathered before she stepped away. One read the first line aloud. Another laughed at the sentence about marriage not creating evidence. "Convenient argument from a woman who married the man most damaged by the warning," he said. Josephine faced him. "A convenient argument would ask you to trust my husband. Mine asks you to inspect the type. Ashby going to swear you did not build it at his ranch. He did not see the galley until after our marriage. That does not answer whether you rebuilt it. No, the demonstration will." A younger cattleman pointed toward the broadside. "Venn says your husband owns loose type. He does. Mixed old job type, incomplete and visibly different from the form in my custody. Anyone may compare it under the same light. You admit you had the means. I admit I have a trade. Skill is not proof of fraud." The first rancher tapped her statement. "Then why should anyone believe you? Do not begin with belief. Begin with the paper." The laughter thinned, not because the men had accepted her, but because she had refused the contest they wanted. Josephine remained until all three read the signature. Then she carried the mercantile copy across the yard. The clerk, who had once stopped weighing beans while Cyrus confronted her, accepted the sheet without apology. "How long does it stay?" he asked. "Until dusk tomorrow, unless weather destroys it. And, if Venn objects, tell him to print his objection beneath his own name." The clerk drove 2 tacks into the interior notice board where rain could not reach. Josephine wrote the placement and time in her notebook. The copy would remain there until after the preliminary meeting. She found Darnell near the stock pens discussing rail space with Coulter and another rancher. Josephine gave him the retained meeting copy. Darnell read it slowly. "You still want a public showing?" "Yes, not at Cottonwood Gate." "Agreed. Not inside Venn's shop." "Agreed. Freight office first. Limited men. If the paper justifies more, we move to the warehouse." "That is what I want." Coulter glanced toward Grant, who stood near the buckboard. "Will Ashby speak to her character?" Josephine answered before Darnell could repeat the question. "My character is not the evidence." Darnell studied the professional signature at the bottom. "Some men will call that pride. They may call it whatever they can print under their own names." He handed the sheet back. "Tomorrow morning, small room near the depot. Bring the numbered jobs, the source statements, and your retained copy. Keep the galley wrapped unless we agree on conditions." "I will." On her way back across the yard, a gust tore an auction notice from a nearby post. Josephine turned to make sure her own statement held. The space beside Cyrus's broadside was empty. Grant stood several paces from the board with the board copy in his hands. He had removed both tacks without tearing the paper. The care did not lessen the act. Josephine changed direction. Grant saw her approaching and did not hide the sheet. "Put it back." Those men were repeating his filth, as if your signature gave them permission. "My signature marks where his words end." "They were laughing at you." Josephine held out her hand. "The hammer." Grant gave it to her. She did not take the statement. Instead, she pointed to the 2 empty tack holes in the board. "You were told not to remove anything bearing my name." "Yes, you removed it." "Yes, why?" His grip loosened on the paper. "Because hearing them use your name that way hurt me." "And what did you call that feeling when you acted on it?" Grant looked at the board copy. "Protection." "No." Josephine touched the upper tack hole with one finger. "Protection would have left me here and asked what I wanted. You erased the answer because the insult reached you." Grant's face tightened. He did not defend the intention. "You are right. Do not agree because it ends the argument faster. I am not. Then correct it." He waited. "Tell me how." Josephine took 2 fresh tacks from the board ledge and placed them in his palm. "Put the same sheet back through the same holes. Stand beside it until I remove it. If a man asks whether I am honest, do not answer for me. If Cyrus addresses you instead of me, tell him I decide what bears my name." Grant returned to the board. Wind caught the lower edge of the statement. He held it flat, aligned the first tack with the existing hole, and drove it in. The second went through the lower mark. He stepped aside, close enough to keep the sheet from tearing, and far enough not to obscure a word. The rancher who had laughed earlier called, "Ashby, you letting your wife confess in public now." Grant did not answer the insult. "She decides what bears her name. You believe her story? Her work stands where she put it. You guarantee that Galley is honest?" Grant's eyes moved to Josephine. "Ask her." The answer cost him. Josephine could see that. He gave it anyway. Darnell approached with 2 stockmen behind him. "Preliminary meeting is set for 9 tomorrow," he said. "Cyrus will be invited. Ashby may attend. He speaks only if asked." "Agreed," Josephine said. Cyrus arrived before noon with no papers in his hands. His gaze went first to the restored board copy, then to Grant standing beside it. "You have made a public fool of yourself," he told him. Grant did not respond. Cyrus faced Josephine. "And you have confessed to taking my property. I have stated what I preserved and what I will. Demonstrate." "Type does not speak. It prints." Darnell stepped between the listening men and the board. "Tomorrow we decide whether there is enough for a full examination. Freight office. No crowd." Cyrus smiled without humor. "A private performance." "A preliminary commercial inquiry," Darnell said. "Not a court. You may answer anything placed on the table." Cyrus looked toward Josephine's portfolio. There will be nothing worth answering. He walked toward Venn job office. At dusk, Josephine removed the board copy herself. The wind had worn the lower edge, but the signature remained clear. She folded it along no new crease and placed it in her portfolio beside the retained meeting copy. The mercantile copy remained posted indoors under the clerk's care. Grant waited beside the buckboard. He did not offer his hand when she climbed up. The distance was not punishment. It was recognition. Tomorrow, in a room where his reputation might have carried hers, Grant would have to prove he understood how to stand beside Josephine without standing in front of her. Fun 9 de Duk Viet Ngay. Chuk Din Yan Nai Vada Baogom Preliminary Stockman Meeting. Bell's Trade Card. Grant Vert Qua Trust Test. First earned Kiss Duinyut. Gom Gang Apprentice Gang Bao Cyrus Dang Fa Type. Vitemot Part 9 Cax E V Fam Continuity Lock. The Romantic Intimacy Ledger. Dak Biet Gong Wika Lup First Kiss. Wak Dai Ham Fa Gong Mang Moi. Van Tiptel Hup Late Tel Final Optimized. Outline La Part 10 June 8-9. Anonymous cancellation 3 o'clock deadline. Witness preparation. First sustained embrace. The Cyrus Swat Hint Look Rank Sang the Loose Type. Van 10 Da Duk Viet Day. Du Ngay Chuk Din Yan Nay. Gom Anonymous cancellation. Tai Han Chuin Freight Look Bazo. Bell Kung Kup Zay. Grant Tule Kai. Apprentice Tut Went Lam Chung. First sustained embrace. The Cyrus. Swat Hint Look Rank Sang the Hope Loose Type. Viet Lai Part 10 Se Vifam Continuity Lock. Lup Milestone Tunmut. The Fangan Psych Be Seen Thu. Fun Tip the Hup Layla Part 11. Warehouse Demonstration. Live Impression. Evidence Custody. Commercial Reversal. The Passionate Non-Explicit Kiss. Cyrus's box of loose type rattled when he set it on the warehouse table, and every man in the room understood the argument before he spoke. Any trained compositor could copy a printed warning if she had enough metal, enough patience, and a reason to lie. Darnell waited until the stockmen had gathered before he called the room to order. More men had come than expected. Some carried original warnings. Others brought the false cancellation and the railroad correction folded together. Sheriff Mercer stood near the side door. The rail agent occupied a place beside the depot ledger. Bell remained near the press, sleeves rolled, ready to observe but not interfere. Grant stood behind Josephine's right shoulder, far enough away that his presence did not become an answer. "This is not a court," Darnell said. "We are deciding whether notices tied to Venn job office remain fit for commercial reliance. Sheriff Mercer is here to keep the peace and receive any complaint properly made. No man in this warehouse will pronounce guilt beyond what the papers show." Cyrus rested one hand on the auction box. "Then the papers show a compositor with loose type, a motive to save her husband's cattle, and a galley she admits removing from my shop." Josephine placed job number 416 on the table. "Loose type can copy words," she said. "It cannot easily copy the physical history of a form that existed before the copy was needed." She laid job no. 418 beside it, then the false warning between them. Jobs 416 and 418 are legitimate Venn work. Both carry the shop imprint. The warning carries no imprint, but it bears the same damaged sorts. On the reverse is job number 417. Cyrus smiled. "A pencil number proves nothing. Alone, no." Josephine placed the North Road rancher's statement beside the circular. "This sheet was delivered May 23rd by your apprentice, when the bundle came up one copy short." Darnell turned toward the boy. The apprentice stood near the rear wall with both hands clenched at his sides. Josephine did not look at him until he chose to step forward. "State only what you know," she said. The boy swallowed. "Mr. Venn numbered the retained sheet 417. He said he did not want it left in the case. When the North Road bundle came up short, he told me to put that sheet in the delivery satchel. I carried it and nailed it to the rancher's gate." Cyrus's voice cut across the room. "A boy hoping to save his wages can say anything. Then ask him about the paper before he speaks of motive," Josephine said. She unwrapped the first proof. The triangular tear showed at the upper right corner. A faded ink smear darkened the left edge. The main fold crossed Cyrus's penciled correction, and a second diagonal crease cut through the lower corner. "Did you handle this sheet?" The apprentice stepped closer without touching it. "Yes. How do you know?" I made that lower crease when I folded it to carry to Mr. Venn's desk. The upper corner was already torn. The ink smear was there. He wrote the correction across the middle fold. What correction? He changed unconfirmed concerns to contagious sickness, then added that buyers should not inspect or purchase. When? Before Mrs. Ashby left the shop. Before she married Mr. Ashby. Before the warnings were delivered, Cyrus laughed once. You expect grown men to accept a frightened boy's memory over mine. No, Josephine said. I expect them to compare his memory with the objects. She unwrapped the original locked galley. The metal form lay tight within its frame. Bell inspected the chase without touching it. Sheriff Mercer watched both sides of the table. Josephine set clean warehouse paper beside the press and held up the ink supplied by the freight office. This paper did not come from Cottonwood Gate. This ink did not come from Venn job office. The press belongs to the warehouse. Cyrus gestured toward the loose type, and the skill belongs to you. Yes, she met the accusation directly. Skill can reproduce words. We will see whether your box reproduces this earlier form. Josephine inked the locked galley and laid the clean sheet. Her right palm burned when she applied pressure, but the scar held. Bell steadied the press bed only after she nodded. Josephine pulled the impression and lifted the paper before witnesses. The room bent toward it. The chipped capital R appeared in the same place. The leanings repeated. The wide final spacing returned. So did a faint furniture mark beneath the lower line, a small accidental bruise where the form had pressed unevenly. Josephine placed the fresh impression beside the first proof. Line for line, the arrangement matched. The pencil correction crossed words already occupying those positions. Cyrus's auction box could imitate the warning's language. It could not explain a proof bearing physical folds, tears, marks, and corrections witnessed before the marriage he blamed. Darnell looked at Cyrus. Can you account for the same furniture mark? She had the warning to copy. The mark does not appear on every distributed warning, Bell said. It appears where pressure caught the form and where this proof was pulled. Copying the wording would not tell her to reproduce a hidden flaw that became visible only on an early impression. Cyrus turned on him. You sell her paper and call yourself impartial. I sold paper at my ordinary price. The impression does not care who paid. The rail agent opened the depot ledger. No official livestock disease notice came through this office. No telegram authorized the warning. No order canceled today's meeting. The false postponement carried neither my name nor any clerk's lawful mark. Josephine placed the anonymous cancellation on the table. The apprentice spoke before fear could close him again. I set that at Venn job office. Mr. Venn ordered the shop name left off. Cyrus's face lost color. You said it because she told you what to say. I had not spoken to her since the warning interview until last night. Darnell raised one hand before the room could erupt. More proof. Less noise. Coulter's signed observation came next. He read his own statement aloud. 12 selected cattle showed no outward signs justifying the warning's certainty. He still declined to buy, because the broader market had already been frightened. This does not clear Cottonwood Gate's whole herd, Josephine said. It proves the notice-shaped trade even after inspection failed to confirm its certainty. Darnell opened Grant's leather packet. 3 ranchers had signed that low offers arrived before the warning. 2 buyers had written that Cyrus predicted selected small outfits would soon be forced to sell and advised them to keep cash ready. Toland stood near the warehouse doors, face tight with calculation. Darnell addressed him. Did Venn approach you before the warning? Toland hesitated. Yes. What did he say? That several small ranches would be pressed by delay, that I should keep money ready. Did he name Cottonwood Gate? Yes. Did he say why the ranches would be delayed? Toland's eyes moved toward Cyrus. He said the market would lose confidence. Before any public warning existed. Yes. Darnell did not ask Toland to confess to an agreement the papers could not prove. He did not need to. The sequence had become its own answer. Shop information identified vulnerable shipment dates. Low offers arrived first. The unsigned warning followed. Buyers withdrew. Then an anonymous cancellation tried to prevent the evidence from being seen. Sheriff Mercer stepped toward the table. Mrs. Ashby, do you wish to swear a complaint and tender these items for safekeeping? Josephine looked down at the galley, first proof, fresh impression, and numbered jobs. She had carried them through a broken room, a courthouse marriage, and every attempt Cyrus had made to convert possession into guilt. Once surrendered, they would no longer remain beneath her personal control. That was the cost of making the matter larger than her word. Yes. Mercer opened his notebook. You understand I will inventory them and hold them pending proper process? I do. Voluntarily? Yes. Cyrus moved before the first item could be listed. He lunged across the table, one hand reaching for the locked galley. Grant caught his wrist and shoulder and turned him away from the form without striking him. The movement was swift, controlled, and final. Cyrus twisted once. Grant held only long enough for Mercer to seize his arm. Then he released him. Attempted seizure in front of witnesses, Mercer said. You are finished reaching for evidence today. The rail agent swore a complaint concerning the false cancellation. Josephine swore hers regarding the attempted seizure and the disputed materials. Mercer inventoried each object aloud. Original locked galley. First proof with triangular tier, folds, ink smear, and pencil correction. Fresh warehouse impression. Job nose. 416, 417, and 418. Anonymous cancellation. He wrote a receipt and handed it to Josephine. The portfolio felt lighter when she placed the receipt inside it. Not empty. Changed. Darnell faced the stockmen. No man here is declaring a criminal verdict. But until proper authority resolves the matter, notices issued by Venn Job Office will not be accepted by this group as reliable commercial warnings, unless supported by a named source. One buyer tore a pending low-price agreement in half. Another said he would return to Cottonwood Gate for a second inspection. The mercantile clerk removed Cyrus's latest broadside from his pocket and folded it face inward. No cheering followed. Trust withdrew one man at a time. Cyrus watched it leave. Outside the warehouse, the morning wind struck Josephine's face with the smell of coal smoke and dry grass. Grant came through the door after Mercer led Cyrus toward town. He stopped within reach but did not touch her. Are you hurt? He asked. No. Do you want me closer? Josephine answered by taking hold of his coat and pulling him down to her. The kiss was deeper than the first, urgent without becoming careless. Grant's hand settled at her waist. The other remained open against her back, never closing off the space behind her. Josephine ended the kiss when she chose. Grant let her. Bell stood several yards away, pretending interest in a freight schedule. When Josephine turned, he held out no promise, only the same honest possibility. Write to the address on my card, he said. This time we can discuss terms. Josephine rested one hand over the sheriff's receipt inside her portfolio. The evidence was no longer hers to carry. The next choice was. The sheriff's receipt weighed less than the evidence it represented. But Josephine kept touching the folded paper inside her portfolio, as though the galley still rested there. On June 11th, she and the rail agent appeared before the justice of the peace in the same courthouse where she had married Grant 18 days earlier. Cyrus stood on the opposite side of the room, with an attorney from Cheyenne and no ink on his hands. Sheriff Mercer described the attempted seizure in the warehouse. The rail agent swore that no lawful notice had canceled the meeting. Josephine stated when she had preserved the galley, how the warning had circulated, and why she had voluntarily surrendered the physical evidence for safekeeping. The justice did not rule on the alleged market fraud. He did not decide ownership of the galley. He heard enough concerning the warehouse disturbance to require Cyrus to post recognizance to keep the peace and appear when properly called. The statements, buyer notes, railroad records, and Mercer's inventory would be sent forward for consideration at the next district court sitting. This is not an acquittal, the justice told Cyrus, nor is it a conviction. It is notice that you will answer through lawful process rather than by reaching across another man's table. Cyrus posted the required security before noon. He walked out free, which angered several ranchers waiting in the hall. Josephine felt no surprise. Evidence had never promised speed, it promised a path. Outside, Grant stood beside the buckboard. He did not ask why Cyrus had not been jailed. What happens now, he asked. The papers go forward. Mercer keeps the objects. Cyrus keeps his shop unless customers decide otherwise. And you? I decide where my work goes next. By June 12th, that decision had become practical. The rail depot refused every commercial warning without a named source. 2 ranchers withdrew printing orders from Venn job office. The mercantile clerk returned Josephine's posted statement rather than discard it and paid a cash deposit for a corrected price list. Cyrus's door remained open, but fewer men crossed its threshold. No crowd pulled down his sign. Trust simply stopped bringing him money. Josephine spent the afternoon inspecting a narrow room near the freight district. It stood above a cooper's storage space and smelled faintly of pine shavings. The floor sloped toward the east wall. A small stove needed a new length of pipe. The window faced the tracks, and the door carried an inside bolt that seated cleanly. $3 a month, the landlord said. 4 if you sleep here. I will not. Then 3 due in advance. Josephine checked access to the rear stairs, asked who held duplicate keys, and made the landlord replace the cracked hasp on the street door before she paid. He watched her count the coins. Your husband approve. He is not renting it. She signed Josephine Noland Ashby beneath the room terms, paid the deposit, and folded her copy into the portfolio behind Sheriff Mercer's receipt. The room existed before Grant knew about it. That mattered. On June 13th, a railroad mail envelope arrived from Cheyenne bearing Bell's business mark. He offered a guaranteed 3-month position at $12 a week, with lodging in the home of his widowed sister. Continued employment would depend on the quality and speed of Josephine's work. He cited the corrected cancellation, the ranch notice he had examined, and the warehouse impression. No praise beyond what he had witnessed. A real offer. Josephine read it twice, then wrote a counterproposal. She would remain in Laramie if Bell agreed to send 2 contract jobs each month, with copy and forms carried by railroad mail. Payment would be due upon accepted proofs. She asked that the Cheyenne position remain open until the date Bell had already given for her answer. The reply left on the afternoon train. By then, she possessed 3 separate paths: Cheyenne, independent work in Laramie, or departure from both. Cottonwood Gate was no longer the only door between her and the street. She returned to the ranch on June 14th with the signed room agreement, Bell's offer, and a copy of her counterproposal inside the portfolio. Grant was in the office repairing the binding of an account ledger. The 9 Meadowlark impressions remained wrapped in the desk drawer beside the woodblock. He rose when she entered, then waited. Josephine set all 3 papers before him. Read them. Grant began with the room agreement. His finger moved beneath the smaller lines. He paused over duplicate and tenancy, sounded neither word aloud, and continued. Josephine did not supply them. He read Bell's offer next, then her counterproposal. The process took time. She gave it to him. When he finished, he placed each sheet back in its original order. You paid the room deposit. Yes, before you told me. Yes, good. The answer disarmed her more than objection would have. Bell offers $12 a week. I read that. You are not going to tell me Cottonwood Gate can pay more. It cannot. You could offer to make up the difference. That would turn staying into another debt. Grant rested both hands on the desk. If you choose Cheyenne, I will drive you to the train. If you choose the room in Laramie, I will bring work to your door and knock before entering. If you leave Wyoming Territory, I will not follow unless you ask. Josephine opened the drawer and lifted the Meadowlark woodblock. Old ink darkened its carved face. You kept this 9 years. Yes, you kept 9 impressions. Yes, you kept the truth until fear forced it out. Grant lowered his head once. Yes, and you removed my statement because your pain seemed more urgent than my choice. Yes, no explanation followed. No request that good intentions reduce the harm. I loved you before you needed me, he said. I will love you if needing me ends. Josephine's fingers tightened around the woodblock. It has ended. Grant went still. I signed a room. I have work money. I can take Bell's train. I know. Then hear the rest. She crossed the space between them and placed the woodblock in his open hands, keeping her own around it. This belongs in my print room now. If that is where you want it, it is. She felt his breath catch, but he did not close his fingers over hers. Josephine raised one hand and laid it against his chest. I married you so I could survive. Grant's heartbeat struck hard beneath her palm. I am staying because I love you. His eyes closed briefly. When they opened, the restraint in him had not vanished. It had become choice under pressure. I love you, Josephine. He said it without the shelter of 9 years, grief or paper birds. Present tense. Openly, she rose onto her toes and kissed him. Grant received the kiss before answering it, one hand settling at her waist, only after she leaned closer. The woodblock remained between their other hands. Josephine ended the kiss with her forehead near his, both of them breathing harder than the touch alone should have required. The room remains mine, she said. Yes. Some nights I may work late in town. Yes, you will not treat distance as abandonment. I will ask what it means before deciding. Better. After supper, they discussed ordinary matters that felt more intimate than vows. Which ranch notices Josephine could print. Which days she would stay in Laramie. How paper could travel with the freight mail. Whether Amos could be trusted to deliver clean copy without folding it into his pocket. Amos objected from the doorway that he had only done that twice. Night settled over Cottonwood Gate. Josephine went to the back bedroom and closed the door. The brass key remained on her side. Sometime later, Grant knocked once. He did not try the latch. Josephine opened the door but kept one hand on its edge. Grant stood in the hall without hat or coat. "Do you want me here?" he asked. The question carried no claim from the courthouse, no reward for protection, no payment demanded for 9 years of love. Josephine opened the door wider. Yes, she took his hand and drew him across the threshold. Then she closed the door and turned the key herself. 6 weeks after the warehouse meeting, Josephine unlocked her own print room door before Grant reached the top of the stairs. The new brass key turned cleanly in the lock. Below them, coopers rolled empty barrels across the freight yard, and a locomotive breathed coal smoke beyond the depot. The room still smelled of pine shavings from the storage space beneath it. But now the east wall held type cases, shelves, paper wrapped against dust, and a narrow desk beneath the window. A painted board beside the door read Josephine Noland, Ashby, job printing and proof work. Grant stopped to read every word. He had seen the sign before. He still read it each time. "The spacing after Noland is wider," he said, "because the painter misjudged the board. You going to make him fix it?" He offered. Josephine set her portfolio on the desk. It no longer carried the original locked galley, first proof, or numbered jobs. Those remained in Sheriff Mercer's custody, with a fresh warehouse impression and anonymous cancellation. Inside the portfolio were Mercer's receipt, her room agreement, Bell's letters, Coulter's statement, the 3 public notices, and receipts for work already paid. I told him a wider space does not alter the name. Grant nodded. Sounds like a printer's answer. It is a customer's answer. I paid for readable. I received readable. He placed a folded sheet on the desk. Then I am here as a customer. Josephine opened it. Cottonwood Gate requested a new inspection notice for 30 head to be shown at the Western Pen the following Thursday. Grant had written the copy himself. The letters were large and uneven, but every fact appeared in the proper place. "You wrote committee with 1 T," she said. "I suspected it wanted another. It does. Charge me for the correction. I charge by the completed job." Grant took 2 coins from his pocket and placed them beside the order. "Eeples." Josephine wrote him a receipt. "You know where I live. That does not make the work free." "No, and marriage does not replace a signature." He signed the customer line slowly. His pencil paused over the second T after Josephine wrote the corrected spelling above it. He copied the word without shame. That was new. The work itself was not. In the week since June 10th, Cottonwood Gate had completed 1 fair sale. The price did not recover every dollar the warning had cost them, but it covered the most urgent accounts and left enough hay money to face autumn without begging credit from Toland. A second buyer had inspected another group and had not yet committed. The north wall of the barn still lacked 2 boards. Amos still complained that every repair revealed another. No fortune had risen from the evidence table. The ranch had only regained the right to bargain, without a lie standing between the cattle and the buyer. Josephine's work had grown the same way, 1 honest job at a time. Belle had accepted her counterproposal after 3 letters and 1 corrected contract. 2 sets of copy came each month from Cheyenne by railroad mail. Josephine pulled proofs, marked queries, returned corrected forms, and received payment after acceptance. The neighbor printer downstairs leased her a small hand press by the job. He charged for ink separately and complained if she left furniture out of order. In exchange, he gave the former Venn apprentice a place at his cases and a weekly wage paid every Saturday. The boy still flinched when an employer raised his voice. He no longer worked behind a locked partition. That morning, the mercantile clerk had delivered copy for a price circular and placed a cash deposit on Josephine's desk without mentioning the smear broadside once posted outside his door. No apology, no grand change of heart. He had simply trusted her with paid work. It was enough. Across town, Venn Job office had kept its doors open for several weeks after the meeting. Then unpaid rent, withdrawn orders, and outstanding paper accounts forced Cyrus to sell his press and 2 type cases. The sale did not decide whether he had committed commercial fraud. The district process still waited on testimony, records, and the next proper sitting. Josephine had learned not to confuse consequence with verdict. Cyrus had lost the authority men once supplied to his unsigned words. Law would decide what else he lost. Grant read the new mercantile copy where it lay on her desk. "Clear," he said. "You missed 1 figure." Josephine followed his finger. The clerk had written 8 cents in one place and 9 in another. "Which did he authorize?" "He told me 9 at the counter." "Then I need him to initial the correction. I can take it back." Josephine handed him the sheet. "As my messenger? What does that pay?" "A cup of coffee if you return with the clerk's initials." "Poor wages." "Then decline the work." Grant tucked the paper into his coat. "I accept." Before he could leave, he bent and kissed her temple. The touch was brief and familiar, given without interrupting her hands or asking her to abandon the form before her. Josephine leaned into it by choice. "Coffee after the circular," she said. "I heard the condition." He returned within the hour with the corrected figure initialed. While he was gone, Josephine opened the lower desk drawer and took out the meadowlark woodblock. Old ink remained in the shallow cuts. The wood had passed from her hands to Grant's in 1878, rested in his desk through 9 silent springs, and entered this room only after she had signed the lease herself. The 9 impressions remained wrapped at Cottonwood Gate, 1 for each spring from 1879 through 1887. There would be no 10th secret print. Love did not need another hidden year. Josephine locked the woodblock into a small form beneath the final lines of Cottonwood Gate's new circular. The notice named the cattle count, inspection place, time, witnesses, buyer terms, and the source of every statement. It claimed no official clearance. It borrowed no authority from an unnamed office. At the bottom she set her own line, printed by Josephine Noland, Ashby, Laramie Plains. Grant stood at the side of the press while she inked the form. "Need me to steady the bed?" he asked. "On the return." He waited. Josephine pulled the first impression, checked the pressure, then adjusted 1 piece of packing near the lower edge. Her right palm carried only a faint pink line now. It held firm as she drew the press again. The second sheet came clean, meadowlark beside her printed name. Grant reached to keep the page from sliding when wind entered through the raised window. His hand caught the lower margin and stopped before covering the signature. Josephine saw the restraint and the memory inside it. He no longer needed instructions for every boundary. Some had become habit. "Approved?" he asked. She examined the bird, the spacing, and the line beneath it. "Approved." Outside, 2 saddled horses waited near the freight yard rail, 1 for each of them. Josephine wrapped Belle's completed proofs, addressed the packet to Cheyenne, and carried it downstairs. The depot clerk stamped the railroad mail receipt. She placed that slip beside the others in her portfolio, then locked the print room behind her. The key went into her own pocket. Grant held neither reins until she reached the horses. He handed Josephine hers and mounted only after she did. Cottonwood Gate lay west beneath the open July sky. The print room remained behind her, paid for through the month, its lock sound and its sign visible from the street. A place she could return to alone. A place she could leave without permission. Grant turned his horse toward the road, but waited for her to choose the pace. Josephine leaned from her saddle, caught the front of his coat, and kissed him beneath the freight yard sun. His smile came slowly when she released him. "Home?" he asked. Josephine glanced once at the key in her palm, then closed her fingers around it and faced west. Home. They rode into the wind together, toward a house she was free to leave, and therefore free to choose again.